it's needed a lot of. We need to understand what being in a house means, what being in a house means. So we'll have to reinterpret what housing is. We need to find common ways of globalizing this. We have to promote the diversity and the changing throughout this time. We talked about this yesterday, and as has been a constant theme during the symposium, and we'll keep talking about that. So I'll ask CEO of WebSegnet to direct himself to the public. And he'll talk about the human avatar, urban organism, and a place to belong. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to the institution that made this symposium possible. I'll begin thanking the Ideal Spaces Foundation, namely Ulrich and Grant, for sharing with us the desire to hold a symposium in our city, thus placing the city of Guimarães at the center of the discussion, at the heart of the thought around the city, with particular focus on housing. To the municipality of Guimarães for the way to embrace this event from the very beginning, to Mr. President Dr. Domingos Bragança, and especially highlight the role of the City Councillor of Urbanism, Architect Rana Cotter, for all the effort, enthusiasm, and dedication for the immediate involvement when we present this project. A sincere thank you as well to all the speakers who generously gave their time, motivated solely to their willingness to contribute, both personally and professionally, with their knowledge to the experience to enrich this discussion. I also extend my appreciation to all those present today for changing this moment with all in the search of the path and stimulate that may lead us towards the solution that mitigates the so-called housing crisis. I will begin the presentation by explaining who we are. We define Zegna Group as a creative center dictated to the fields of real estate, development, construction, and architecture. We do not view this as separate areas, but as inherently complementary. We view it as the transversality of their thinking that critical architecture thought is stimulated and naturalized. We understand the architecture as a timeless, collaborative discipline. This is implied by a collective reflection between place, object, and man. This breadth of activity allows us to work in a way curiosity challenges certainty, in a constant search of new answers through critical thinking, enabling us to define and understand the man habitat in the spaces where we live. We are particularly interested in the study of housing. It is in the domain that we most intensely focus, as we are deeply concerned with the contemporary ways of living. In that sense, I would like to say the following. It is necessary to diagnose the so-called housing crisis. This is no housing crisis. A crisis is defined as an extreme, widespread, temporary situation. What exists is a housing shortage. A shortage is continuously lack of insufficiency of something necessary under a prolonged condition. The much talk about housing crisis is not a recent situation, but one that has been ongoing. Moreover, it does not affect the entire society, only a particular segment. It does not affect those who have a lot, nor those who have nothing. Those with significant means finding the current market products that meet all their needs and often acquire more than one home. Those with no means, i.e., the segment of society that least financial capability, now find access to housing through public housing. Whether such housing is dignified, however, is more debatable. Thus, the middle class is the segment facing the greatest difficulties in access to housing, especially at two specific stages of life. Those between 25 and 35 years old who cannot afford to buy because property prices have misaligned with their ability to generate wealth. Existing housing options are not suited to the new societal structures, human mobility, evolving family models, and contemporary day life. Those between 60 and 80 years old, who despite ongoing their homes, find it incompatible with their current needs and comfort levels. Senior centers and nursing homes are often the only alternatives, but frequently they limit independence and cohabitation with family. We thus identify those most in need of efficient home housing solutions capable of responding to real and urgent needs. From our organization perspective, the issue must be analyzed from three contemporary viewpoints. The problems would be developer, builder, and architect. Not in a hierarchical order, but as independent parts. As a developer, the role is find purpose. That is to think of specific answers for the needs of today's middle society. This demands a pragmatic, clear understanding of how society lives, especially these key demographics, and a conscious dialogue with all the stakeholders in shaping how we live. Consider the example of a young couple when where and in what will I commit in 30 or 40 years of income to acquire a dignified home that meets my needs. This generation is often encouraged to buy based on hypothetical future need, leading them to opt for the dominant T3 typology. But society is constantly evolving, and place of today is not the place of tomorrow. We must demystify the idea that a house is for life. Instead, we must develop flexible, adaptable responses to match specific phases of life in changing circumstances. As a builder, the role is to materialize. To do this, we must acknowledge the current paradigm shaped by market dynamics, labor shortages, and production costs. Regulatory demands for quality and sustainability. Today, the construction cost per square meter lies between 1,200 and 1,400. On one hand, the need for different parts like lighting and noise canceling, it is very important. There are multiple factors that change the amount that each square meter will cost. These are a constant. We must then focus on the variable area. The larger the space, the more expensive the product. So, what to do? Let's work in the math in reverse. Imagine the same young couple with a monthly household income of 2,000 to 2,500. They can afford a mortgage with a maximum effort of 40%, meaning monthly payments of 700 to 800. Over 30 years, this translates to a 20,000 loan. What can they buy with 200,000? Divide this by the average sale price of 2,500 meter cube, and the result is 80 square meters. So I ask, what products exist in the market at 80 meters square? Is it possible to design a home that meets real needs with this area? Here enters the role of architecture. To understand the role of architecture, one must dissect. To see, interpret, and finally create. To dissect is to look within, to understand workings of what's not difficult. That is the architect's role, to look beyond what is visible, to understand its full composition and essence. We are not interested in architecture as mere design, isolated and object focused. We pursue architecture that inspires and is inspired, that collaborates, responds to purposes, use contemporary reality. It is the understanding of the relationship between the place, object, and the man that enables truly sustainable architecture. What we call Architectural sustainability. Architectural sustainability reflects the balance use of free essential resources, space, material, and life, and now we take them as resources. We wish to talk about the what is material and how it has its reaction with the soil, how it's an ecosystem that is defined, that it requires a way where it is used. It defines this. We want to minimize its impact only to the strict parts. We look forward to getting rid of the space that's not useful. All physical elements composing the architectural body, this is a renewable or recyclable resource. Medium spent to be unconsciously, but with freedom for architectural expression and identity. Because architecture is a community and not just the end goal. And to end life, the human component which brings the space to life, life is a self renewing resource. L, large spend. So we see this as something that cannot be spendable. So we see it as a L, a large spend, that must be maximized and enriched throughout thoughtful design. Architectural sustainability is thus the harmonious management of these resources in a way that meets today's needs with compromising the future. In a timeless collaboration across individuals, societies, and generations. For this analysis and integration of the three roles, we developed the UMA concept, not as a closed solution, but as a concrete possibility to address a society in need of new ways to live and relate. UMA is a place to belong, emerges from our desire to explore new living dynamics and reinterpret dominant housing models. With our multidisciplinary activity, we seek to inspire and create urban organisms that promote new spatial experiences. We, we reinterpret the way we conceive the city. We see Huma as an organism that belongs to, shapes, and is part of the city, a housing organism that forces urban living where public space is a core extension for the home. We imagine public spaces with varied uses, balancing humanized and naturalized environments, pedestrians and vehicle coexistence. In Uma, cars access the periphery. Inside, it's pedestrian only. We reveal the square, the garden, the living space. Reinterpret the habitational space because we have to think of city with all those aspects. Everything should flow in the right way. Reinterpret the habitational space, returning the idea of architectural sustainability. We urgently need new typologies designed for the essential experience of living. For example, a family with children and an aging parent can live in a modular combination, T2 plus T0, ensuring independence and shared space. Here, the typology makes us be able to have two types of typology, T2 and T0, ensuring that we can have community spaces. But it also allows you the option of having private. Another example, it's a young couple, a digital nomad, can convert the T0 into a home office, a workspace with privacy and flexibility. Because you're allowed to have the privacy and it allows us to answer the problem to an older generation. With Huma, we have complementary spaces that will help the community by finding places where we can have contemporary spaces. If childcare, health, wellness, co working, creating hubs, raisins, and even social support areas in collaboration with local institutions. It is this integration of public and private, of shared and individual spaces that builds community, a fundamental condition of being human. UMA aims to be intergenerational, allowing diverse experiences to coexist and creating belonging. We reinterpret access to housing. UMA is a proposal that condenses and seeks to resolve all the issues mentioned, from social segments identification to coastal arrest, to the design and new topologies of the future living. We believe that in this viable way to increase housing access and meet existing shortages. UMA could give drive a regulated rental market that helps counter speculation, serving both public and private models. Both privately and publicly. Privately, with public incentives, tax reductions, fees exemptions. In return for regulated rents, public-private partnerships, PPPs, public land with private investment. We also have public initiatives where we have fully public funding with potential self-sustaining and management through service revenues, which means that it can be autosufficient. UMA seeks to be what we call urban organism, reflecting the human habitat. It is a most essential form. For us, Group Sagnea, to speak of housing is to understand the culture and identity of society. To plan, design, and reflect on their home is to understand human beings, their customs, needs, and desires. The home today is more than a shelter. It is the place where I belong, and that belongs to me. It welcomes and enables me to live. It is the space that protects and defines me, a space to celebrate our independence, intimacy, and freedom.